proverb, I am because we are, is the foundation of the ACBN YouTube channel. Tap in for all of our remarkable content and ecosystem mobilization through the phenomenal practitioners and thought leaders we engage on this channel. In the words of Adrienne Marie Brown, things are not getting worse, they are getting uncovered. We must hold each other tight to pull back the veil. Get ready for another amazing ACBN powered interview.
Thank you for coming in on time. We appreciate your excellence. And we are going to get right into it today because we have an excellent panel. And I know they have extensive background, so we're going to go ahead and get started. So we want to begin as we normally do by acknowledging the original stewards of the various lands that we are on. We also acknowledge our ancestors, those who toiled without compassion or compensation. We acknowledge all the elders and community stewards whose shoulders that we stand on as we build, we share and learn together for our collective liberation and sovereignty. So again, thank you and welcome to the session today. As I said, we have a phenomenal panel here of community leaders and elders, so we're super excited. And we just want to start by having the panelists introduce themselves. Please let us know your name, the origin narrative of your organization, and we'll go ahead and get started with Elder Rustum.
Oh, good afternoon, everyone. And normally I would say that I am reaching you from Mi'kma'ki, which is the ancestral home of the Mi'kmaq Nation in Nova Scotia. But right now I'm on vacation in the Eastern Caribbean in St. Kitts. And I just want to thank everyone for coming here and thank me. My name is Ross Southwell, and I'm currently, I'm the founding CEO and currently in a position with the Black Business Initiative, which has been around for just short of 26, 27 years. We've been in existence since 1996.
Thank you. And Brother Clement, can you go ahead and take yourself off mute and introduce your organization and yourself?
Thank you very much, Sister Blessed. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, everyone, wherever you're listening from. My name is Clement Asena. I'm reaching you from Lethbridge, Alberta today. The organization I represent is called BIPOC Foundation. We started out a few years ago, unregistered, and just doing the work and trying to help out within the community. And in 2020, we decided to incorporate. And later that year, we got talking with the government around a Black Entrepreneurship Ecosystem Fund, which God willing, we did receive, and probably one of the organizations in rural Canada that received that fund. We're very happy that rural Canada was represented, and especially being able to serve Western Canada as a whole, all the way from Lethbridge. Our organization's mandate to set up a business accelerator program that caters to Afro-Canadians across Western Canada. And we've been living and breathing that mandate since last year when the funding was announced, and interacting with the community and interacting with all the leaders, all the community leaders, the likes of our very good brother here, Victor, and all the leaders in the room. Thank you for the opportunity to be here today.
Thank you so much for taking up and being here. We really appreciate the work that you do. I'm going to go ahead and ask that all of our panelists go ahead and drop your contact or organization's website in the chat so that everyone here can save the chat and follow up with you later. We appreciate that. We've also had a couple of our panelists say that they're a little under the weather today, so they may not be on camera. So we're going to go ahead and ask Ms. Josephine Gray if she could go ahead and unmute to introduce yourself and your organization, please.
Hello, everybody. It's a pleasure to be here and an honor. I am in the land of Takaranto, the land of the Mississaugas of the Credit, and many other peoples, because this is the meeting place. And it's very significant in a way because the community that I represent, where the St. Jamestown Community Co-op arose and is being run by and for our community, is one of the most diverse communities in the world, and it includes one of the most diverse communities of peoples from the African diaspora. So we are working hard on figuring out various ways to improve healthy food security based on the human right to food, which tries to ensure that people are able to access the foods that they need, that are good for them, that are sustainable, and that the people involved in the food system have their human rights met as well. So it's a big challenge, but it's going quite well. We've been incorporated since 2015, and we find the co-op model very, very important and helpful for us. We find working with other co-ops to be very beneficial. And we are seeing quite a bit of progress working with Afrocentric farms, and our Roots Rising project is focused on Afro-Indigenous collaboration and looking at the fact that there are also many mixed race people who are part African who have been invisibilized, who we want to ensure are also a part of this process and are seen and heard. And yeah, so we are making progress. We've had some pretty good funding support through the federal government, possibly partly because our MP is a Black woman who was born in this community. So it's been a long haul, but we're starting to see some real success. So it's my honor to be here today, and I hope I can contribute in a way that's useful for everyone. Thank you.
Oh, I'm most certainly that you will. We thank you so much for being here and taking the time. It's very important work that you do. So we thank you for that. And our final panelist is Floydine. If you could unmute yourself and go ahead and introduce yourself and your organization.
Good afternoon, everyone. The protocol already have been established through the acknowledgement of the land that we're on, also in Takaranto and in other parts of the world where Indigenous persons, including Africans, reside. Thank you for this opportunity. I am humbled to sit in the seat as the Executive Director at Caribbean African Canadian Social Services, which really is the organization that has been birthed out of the Jamaican Canadian Association after several decades of them providing social services. We are now an independent charitable organization that has expanded to reach more persons of African ancestry in our diversity. So I bring you greetings on behalf of the organization, including our newly installed board of directors, which now reflects the diversity that we represent, not only in Toronto or the province of Ontario, but also in Canada. And I'm humbled again to be part of what I anticipate to be a very engaging conversation. I am complete. Thank you.
Thank you so much. We really appreciate that. Thank you for sharing. So we're going to get started with our first question. My first question is in terms of sovereignty for Black-led nonprofits and charities related to your charitable status. What do you think are some of the opportunities and challenges that they face? And we can go ahead and start with you, Brother Clement.
Thank you. Thank you for the opportunity to chime in here. As regards sovereignty for Black-led nonprofits, what we find, or what I find specifically, is the fact that even if we have a lot of Black-led nonprofits that are a little bit, that have been around for long, I want to say most of the Black-led nonprofits that are around today are new. Are nonprofits that started, I want to say, within the last 5 years. And not a lot of them have been able to get to that point where, we're now talking charitable status. Of course, we know that the opportunity or the processes that it takes for an organization to get to get through their formative stage, their normative stage, and get to that place where there is enough balance, and then to transition to the point where they now agree as an organization to become or to gain that charitable status, takes a bit of time. And considering that a lot of us Black organizations started within the last 5 years. There is also, that gap and, and that steadiness that needs to, happen within the ecosystem before we begin to, get to that point where we're now accepting, or where we're now stepping into charitable status. There's bigger organizations, older organizations who have come and are ahead of us that we're drawing inspiration from, and we're seeing now recently that sovereignty that we talk about begin to show. It's not really been that pronounced over the years, to be very sincere, and we haven't seen that much sovereignty. But I want to say that as we continue to grow as a community, and as we continue to raise ourselves and lift ourselves up, and continue to show Canada that we are able to take care of ourselves as a community, that we are able to look after ourselves, we are able to operate philanthropic organizations successfully, then we'll begin to see more sovereignty amongst Black-led nonprofits. Thank you.
Thank you for that. Really appreciate that. And Elder Rustin, we'll go to you.
Yeah, thanks for the question. And I like the focus on sovereignty. How do we get supreme power for our organizations? And one of the things that we've seen, naturally, we are one of the granddaddy of the organizations. In fact, being incorporated in 1996 to do entrepreneurial development, the BBI is the longest standing type of organization of this type in Canada, until recently with the investment in the entrepreneurship funds. But clearly, one of the things that we noticed earlier on, that there's so many different tools that our communities had not taken full advantage of, that would give us the necessary supreme power or sovereignty for what we do and what we intend to commit to the communities. And in fact, when we were structured as a society, we actually created what we call a composite organizations, which does include a charitable organization called Businesses Jamming that does youth entrepreneurship. And it's kind of a funny story, because this, I would have be happy to say it came from us, but it came from us working with organizations who had seen the benefit for those type of structures, which our communities sometimes get on the bandwagon a little bit late. And it was, I think it was Royal Bank saw an article that we did about what we're doing with youth, and questioned whether we shouldn't be looking at having a charitable organization to do that. And that, having that level of sovereign ownership for those type of things has since helped us. And I don't know how many people know, in recent times, when BBI was asked as an intermediary for the Supporting Black Community Initiative, one of the things we insisted on was that Black organizations try to, whenever they can, to have charitable status and use the charity in corporation and societies to benefit what we're doing in terms of raising capital and having a sustainable strategy independent of only government funding. So we see that as a clear way for our communities to progress. We are now speaking about generational wealth and wealth creation and other things, but having the proper structures is a beginning for that, and being familiar with those tools have certainly helped. So yeah, Blessed, I actually agree that having that idea of and that term would have been the term that I would use. But then when you look at the definition of what the sovereign means, it speaks to truth to power for Black organizations and what we should be aiming to do. So I encourage folks who actually are looking at creating grassroots organizations to look at those tools. And the charitable process, if I have the time, is not a 6-month turnaround. I think the best case is sometimes 18 months. Some people can do it quicker. So in preparation for that, you have to understand what's been involved and those challenges as well. I'll pause there, because I know we have a lot of people don't have a lot of time.
No, that's fine. Actually, I have a follow-up question for you. Speaking of power, your humility and body of work is really epic. But, you know, BBI has actually supported many organizations in the Atlantic Canada. How has that journey been? Can you share a little bit about that?
Well, it's not without its scars. Floydine will tell you, and others on the call, I'm sure, will tell you, working for our own community is one of the toughest jobs sometimes. We've managed to survive because we had proper structure, and we understood that we were speaking about excellence way in advance of this. Like, listen, we have to be the best organizations. You don't have to be ruthless. You could be empathetic, but put the best structures, the best policies, and so in place, because it will benefit in the long run. So I can be honest and say it hasn't been easy, but it has been very, very rewarding. Like right now, we're doing work pan-Atlantic. We're also doing the Supporting Black Community Initiative is pan-Canadian, and we've invested in over 230 Black organizations across the country, using federal government funding to do that. And the ecosystem, the Black ecosystem that you see in entrepreneurship file, it is, without any modesty or anything, it is patterned off of the BBI journey and the BBI model and what works. So the FACE Coalition, the Black Opportunity Fund, and all these organizations are using the experiences that we've had in the trenches to make sure they don't go down those paths. And ministering, as she said, there wouldn't have been a Black entrepreneurship ecosystem or Black entrepreneurship loan fund if she hadn't visited Halifax and see what the BBI had managed. And we've been around for 25 years, so it hasn't been a short trip. Okay.
Well, not at all. We thank you for sharing that. It is some remarkable work. Thank you. Ms. Josephine, what do you feel are some of the opportunities or challenges that we face?
It's a great question. I mean, I feel that we're in a new period of time where we see a lot more of our people in positions of power, be it within anti-Black racism unit in the city, or even there's a Center for Advancing the Interests of Black People at Toronto Community Housing, which is struggling. But institutionally, we are starting to see more presence of our community, which is, I think, very important to pay attention to the opportunities that could entail if we can come together between civil society and civil service. There is, I think, exciting growth and emerging opportunities with the Foundation for Black Communities, which has an opportunity to help uplift our growing network of Black community-led organizations. As the brother was saying, there's a lot of new ones that have come forward, and if we can start working collaboratively and cooperatively and overcome the sort of very white-dominated competitive paradigm that we've all been trying to struggle within for so long, if we can change course and show solidarity and show common cause, I think this is a really important time to work together to build ongoing infrastructure. And for us in our community, we felt that getting a hold of our food security, food sovereignty, is a key piece at the heart of all of this. Partly because, people who are on the more lower incomes being malnourished, it's more difficult to function, it's more difficult to engage. We recognize that there's a physiological aspect to having a effective and strong community. So we try to look at the whole person. We try to look at, mindfulness practices, health and nutrition, helping people to feel confident and able to defend themselves and the like, especially the young women. So these are things that we've been working on together, and we want to be able to collaborate and join on with, Black-led farms, other organizations that are working on food security. We're talking with African Food Basket, partnering with them around food distribution downtown and trying to develop an infrastructure for Black food sovereignty in the city which has said that they are committed to Black food sovereignty, but have yet to provide any infrastructure, even though there's infrastructure available that exists. So we really do need to get past the divide and conquer that we have been subjected to for so long, and be able to look beyond, different ethnicities and cultures from within our diaspora, be able to make that common cause between those of African and Caribbean and North American descent, and recognize that, we've all been colonized, and it's time for us now to rise and go beyond that, and to bring back, more traditional values, but in the modern era, and the excellence of our creativity and our resilience, building on that and finding common cause, even though we may have very different diets and different needs and the like. So it's a fascinating process. And it's, for me, after 30-something years of work and organizing in the field around human rights and food security, it's I think, an incredibly important window of opportunity for us to do everything we can to secure our future together. And I'm very excited that, Victor and y'all are doing this work. And also wanted to say a shout out to Floydine, because I'm really proud of CAFCAN and the work that's been going on with that charity. I find charities difficult. There's some limitations that are imposed by being a charity. Trustee organization handles some of the very irritating bureaucratic processes that really take away from the important community work that we're doing. So it's finding these partnerships and these ways of connecting different kinds of organizational structures. But I also want to mention something about co-ops that I think is really important, that co-ops have principles that are common across the world. And one of those principles is that we help each other. And it's a very, very different kind of experience to be building a cooperative where everyone is a member owner than it is to be running a nonprofit where those who are most responsible are not allowed to benefit, which I find very challenging for a lot of folks. So we also found that in a very newcomer predominant community, the cooperative model was more understandable and more recognizable and more trusted by many of our newcomers than this, weird North American nonprofit model, which has become, I think, more and more compromised in recent years. So I feel that the co-op is an important model to help find teamwork, to help give people a sense of ownership, and it has allowed us to have a lot of committed people, even when we didn't have space and money, and survive the ups and downs together. So I'm very much about encouraging that as an approach. Our co-op allows for organizations, businesses, and individuals to be members. So there's a lot of ways in which we can start to recreate and generate innovation in how we govern and structure ourselves in order to ensure we have sovereignty. And I do believe that the co-op is one of the strongest ways legally to maintain sovereignty and to maintain autonomy, to maintain informed consent and the like. And that's partly because we also use credit unions, which are also cooperatives. So as banking and corporate rule become more and more powerful and more divisive, I believe that us pulling together really important for our community.
Absolutely. Thank you so much. I think the co-op model is the closest thing linked to something like, so very valid points. Thank you so much for sharing. We appreciate you being here even off camera. My next question is for you, Brother Clement, and your lived experience in the charitables that are essential for racial equity here in Canada.
Thank you, Sister Bruce. As far as best practices goes, right? I want to say the first thing that comes to mind is we as organizations, we do not represent ourselves individually, right? We represent the community, and we do understand and we realize what we are up against at the institutional level, right? And so it's imperative that in everything we do, in our dealings, in the way, either the way we relate or either the ways we work with the clientele that comes through the door, that comes to access our services, or the government organizations, the ecosystem partners that are not, Black-led, that the way we relate with them, or even the government funders, the way we come across to them and the way we relate with them, whether it be at the financial level, even just at the conversational level, at the presentation level. We have to realize that we represent a whole community that have suffered different, above and beyond in our presentation. And that excellence, once we are able to continue to reflect that excellence with our work. For instance, we showed up today. I was happy when at 10 a.m. today, this event started. It started at 10 a.m. and the room was full. That is excellence. That is an example of excellence. We don't, call people to meetings and we show up 15 minutes late for no reason. Right. And, and that's just a very, very little piece out of this entire puzzle. So the fact that we understand the kind of community that we represent, and we need to continue to push ourselves, we need to continue to show, and we need to not present ourselves as tokens. Someone has mentioned on this call today, collaboration. Quite frankly, it's safe to say, I consider this a safe space. So I'm just going to say that sometimes some funding, or we'll receive funding to be able to enable us to work. I can tell you that the default thoughts of the funders are not, the default expectations are not an expectation of success. We have to go and push and deliver on those mandates that we have been given as organizations, and ensure that we deliver them excellently, we deliver them collaboratively. We are not seen as competing unhealthily against each other.
Thank you so much for sharing. And Elder Floydine, we want to know from you and your lived experience in the charitable sector, what do you feel is essential for the racial equity in Canada?
I think the whole idea of racial equity in the charitable sector has a lot to do with how we see and our position ourselves within the sector. I think for too long we have focused on this going hat in hand to like what the previous speaker articulated, as opposed to going in with the power and the greatness that is inherent in us as who we are as African people. So in being able, my lived experiences and living experiences in this sector have much to do with position, which everything from the perspective of expecting sometimes to hear the no, but already always being ready to have the response on how to turn your no into my yes. So I think in navigating racial equity, I think we use our melanin cells to our advantage. I think for me, that has been the position as a woman who is very melanin blessed, seeking equity, woman in every different way, that the racial equity piece is more about helping people to understand why they need us and less about why we need them. And I think one of the things that has happened to us as a result of being enslaved is we've really lost a bit about that in this world of charitable status. We've lost a lot about our greatness and walking in and putting demands on our asks as opposed to sounding like we're begging or accepting things. For example, when I see racial equity, I know I'm being recorded, but I think it's really important for me to articulate what it is that I understand. If we ask the government for $500 million and they give us $100 million, you won't find me thanking the government for that. And I'll tell you why. Because when we deconstruct racial equity in charitable spaces, we should be going back to say, listen, we asked for $500 million because we deserve this $500 million. We're entitled to it. So when you come back to us with less than that which we have asked for, and then we turn around and write letters and commend them for all of this stuff, we're actually contributing to the racial inequity that's being perpetuated. So I think we have to be very intentional and selective and strategic. Part of that is understanding the importance of crossing the river together, so that the crocodiles won't eat us. That is a very good proverb that I abide by, that is African. And understanding that to achieve racial equity, we have to do what Clement said. We can't be tearing each other down. We can't be going to government and private spaces and speaking ill of another organization or its leader, all of that, or challenging because you were not included in the funding call or what have you. I know I'm saying a lot, but this aspect of the charitable piece is so important because I'm fairly new as an executive director. But CAN is positioned in a way that we get to talk about anti-Black racism, even amongst us. We get to talk about diversity, equity, inclusion, and how we are harming ourselves in that. So when we talk about the racial equity and the lived experience, I am also talking about it from a somewhat biased place, working with Rustum, doing the meeting of the minds, and saying that we're coming to you as one voice, even in our independent spaces. So that's how I navigate it. And the last thing I'll say is I cut out the noise. I just cut it out. I don't engage in the, as we say at home, the he say, she say, them say, who is this? Everybody, because in this country, we have so many issues. We don't even have the amount of people or the financial resources to address the issues that we have. That's all I have to say about that now. I hope I answered your question. I am complete. Thank you.
You absolutely did. And there's a lot of hearts in the audience, so we really appreciate that. I do have a follow-up question for you, as you have been really a godsend as an elder and supported a lot of the early stage Black-led organizations, even with trusteeship. Can you tell us a bit more about that journey as well?
Yeah, I mean, it was really part of advantaging our charitable status to assist others to get there. You know, am I my brother's or sister's keeper? That journey for us has been very rewarding in the sense of the fact that when we trustee, we also look at the relevance, the potential, what is it that a group is asking for. And one of the things that I am also mindful of, you know, that 10% or that 15 or 20% admin line that trustees get, that's not the main reason why we do it, because sometimes we don't even accept it. I mean, if somebody's getting $15,000, right? What difference is $1,500 going to make to CAFCAN compared to the entity? So that journey is about, our trusteeship has been rewarding because we're also mentoring. We're mentoring with a view to what Rustum said. So you can go and get your own charitable status. You can go and develop your governance and your leadership model so that you could be in the same place too. And I think that's what I find most rewarding, is the opportunity to also connect with groups that we might not have otherwise been connected to, and to help them along the way so that we strengthen our individual and collective capacity.
Thank you so much. We really appreciate that. And my next question goes to Elder Rustum. As it relates to structural racism, as well as anti-Black racism and systemic discrimination, what best practices or tools or models do you feel are genuinely advancing the Black-led non-for-profit and charities in Canada?
Yeah, and thanks again for that. And you know, it's always great hearing Floydine and some of the other comments, like Clement, who is quite new to me. I think one of the things, and someone else said it already earlier on, one of the biggest and best things we can do is excellence. Like we started this meeting on time and good organization so that no one, white, black, or any color, can actually cast aspersion on the quality of what you do. There's no way you can insult the folks to say that. So we have to overcome those things. And we can either fight with bluster or fight with strategy. And we choose to fight by proving that Black people are resilient. We are capable of working together despite all else. And Floydine gave you an example of that. And we must do a better job of it. And we are capable of, we understand systems and capable of doing excellent work. And so when I see things like Hope Blooms with their garden that now have, we've heard the conversation today, and I keep putting our community that always want to lead all the beautiful piece of care, a time to weep and a time to sow. And there's a time to lead and a time to follow. And we have to choose those things instead of always saying, why is this person getting that? When we're structured, they follow full things. So the idea of anti-Black racism and systemic things that happen to us, one of the things that we have to be excellent at is our reaction to those things, because there's no way any person on this call who are Black haven't met some of it. I retired in 2012. Before I came back in 2016, I went to an event out at the Black Cultural Center. And as I was driving home, putting those things at the board tables and having our community in senior leadership roles is essential to making that change. And we can't sit at our hands, and as everyone else said, we can't keep fighting at each other. The brothers who are at the front line taking the struggle, those are just as sick in the face. And you know, for me, the idea, the concept of us creating some kind of treatise or understanding of ways to work together without the so-called crab in the barrel syndrome, and understanding the simple tenet that we can't lead at all things and be the best at it. So let's find our sweet spot. The guys who are good at medicine and social things. Those are the guys who we need to defer to. And if I can go shoulder to shoulder with Floydine with what she's doing, so much for me, because in turn, we are a better organization for it. And we have bright folks, bright young folks, younger than me for sure, who can do that kind of work. I think that's the state that we are in, and we will change society better.
Much for that, and thank you for sharing that story and taking the time to voice it. As you said, there was people in the room that didn't understand, so we thank you for taking up the opportunities when they come up. And Elder Josephine, we want to pose the same question to you. What do you feel best practices are modern in Canada?
Well, I think, as I mentioned before, understanding and recognizing that people carry wounds and traumas, sometimes genetic. I was from the East Coast and a combination of Mi'kmaq and African descent. And there's a lot of healing that people need. People need to be healed. People need to be healthy. People need to feel a sense of motivation and confidence and hope. And so part of that for us is finding more and more ways to focus the attention on the solution, on what it is we're striving for, what it is we're striving towards, because I find that, you know, there's just been so much. We could spend the next 400 years talking about the last 400 years, or we could work together to overcome, you know? And I feel like also taking a different stance, you know, as was mentioned before, this sort of understandable tendency to and hoping for a crumb from the table. With the Decade for People of Accent that wasn't even acted upon to stand up and say enough is enough. Like, you know, we have been looking into the number of Black farming communities that were erased and eliminated across this country, in Ontario as well. It's time that we stand, when we do look at the past, I want us to look at it in terms of redress, in terms of reparation. But I hope also that we can recognize that the move forward and how we change things. And I think another thing that is not thought about a lot that concerns me is, I'm personally, I'm of half Jamaican descent. But I also understand that there are so many people in Canada and North America that are African and Indigenous descent. And they've been combined that way for many of them for centuries and some more recently. But this is an entire demographic that we rarely think about or speak to. And it's important for us to see that community and that demographic, I believe, because I can see how, those in control of resources are trying to get us to compete between Indigenous reconciliation and the anti-Black racism efforts that are being made. And then you get these little tiny grant programs where you get to be one or the other, but we need to work together, and many of our people are both. So how do we, make sure that we're not allowing them to separate and divide us without at the same time stepping back? So I think this is an important challenge for us to address. And I think too, sometimes, we forget that even not all white people are the same. Like some of the white peoples went through centuries of oppression as well. And there are many, many people in the world who are colonized in one form or fashion. So while they may not be of African descent, they share a history of abuse by the same people. So while we work together to build our solidarity within our diaspora, but also recognizing those on the edges of that diaspora, people like myself who are of mixed race or mixed Indigenous, I think that it builds our ranks, but it also brings into the fold people who have been lost in between for a very long time. Many of us who are of mixed race have felt very unwelcome anywhere for a very long time. So I see that, feel that starting to change. I think it's important because we are a part of this story as well. And when folks who are on the margins of the diaspora are welcomed in, it grows our strength, it grows our reach, and it helps to build bridges across other divides so that ultimately we are able to create enough momentum and enough of a critical mass that our right to sovereignty, to food security, to grow our culture, to organize our communities and our organizations our way becomes undeniable and unstoppable.
Appreciate that. Thank you so much for sharing. My next question is for Brother Clement. In terms of justice, access, equity, and inclusion, diversity, capacity building, do you feel that you have any practitioner frameworks or individuals that inspire you in this area?
Thank you very much. There's lots that inspire me, and I'm happy, to be able to say that. And it's just from a position of could I say that 5-10 years ago? Maybe not, but today I can say that. And what that clearly shows is we have a community that is progressing, and we might not be where we want to be as a community, but we are certainly not where we used to be, and that is huge. I must use this opportunity to give a shout out to our elder Rustam Satwell and the amazing and remarkable work, leveraging their network, leveraging their years of experience, and ensuring that they are creating that bridge and bridging the gap, and interceding on behalf of the community with the government, and making sure that funding is available for other smaller communities to ensure that the work which you need to continue to do as it concerns justice, equity, diversity, inclusion, that all that work is being maintained. Now, our brother Victor is another entity that is doing very extremely remarkable. I want to team at SETI for the work that you guys that you're doing. Just building those bridges and ensuring that you're connecting those dots, bringing organizations and individuals together, so that because we cannot win alone, and that is the truth. My father told me a long time ago. It says, a single piece of broom cannot sweep the room. You have to bunch it together to win, and that is exactly what I see. That is what I continue to advocate with our community. We must work together. We must continue to hold our table from a position of strength. We don't need to dabble into what each others do. We need to find our strength and build on it and become the best at it, and then help our partners, our ecosystem partners, and other organizations to become best at what they do as well. And then bring that strength together to create the united force. Perhaps, maybe in a few years' time, we won't be having to talk this much about justice, equity, access, and inclusion. And that's really where we want to be. We want to be in a world where we don't have to continue to, there is really no need, for us to say we demand justice, because it would now become very obvious that we have walked ourselves to that point where justice is now evident. Access is evident. Inclusion is evident, and we've chosen our path as BIPOC Foundation. We saw a need to hold our position, or to hold our table from the position of economic empowerment, financial inclusion, and representation. We saw a need to hold our table from the position of business ownership and entrepreneurship, and to build that capacity. Because when we're talking about self-sustainability as a community, it ties hand in hand with the conversation of justice. We cannot become self-sustainable as a community if we do not have those businesses that have become big, that have become successful, that have become generational. And we need to continue to help those businesses to build the capacity where it comes to a point where we have big enough businesses to float philanthropic, to become philanthropic, to give back to the community. I will hold it off for now so that we can let others speak. Thank you for the opportunity. This is the blessing.
Thank you so much. Wow, very well said. We really appreciate all of your remarks. My next question is for Elder Floydine. Many of our leaders, both nationally and internationally, have raised awareness around rest being a form of resistance. As a leader, how do you feel self-care, like how essential self-care is to the well-being of your work?
I think it is extremely important. I think it is necessary. I think it's in our DNA. If we think about how we grew up and what time we got up to eat, what time we ate by, what we do, there's a reason why the sun sets at a certain time. It means our bodies are supposed to shut down, right? And so I think that's some work that we have to do in the leadership space. I often speak about there needs to be not the best example, but I think you'll understand it, a union for CEOs and EDs where we are protected in a way that's different to employees, because the expectation of us in this type of leadership doesn't lend itself in a similar kind of way to getting as much rest as we need and require. So it is extremely important. It's extremely important because we carry on our shoulders a lot, that when we show up in spaces, we have to be showing up still with a smile, still focused, still not looking like we just rolled out of a bed or something. So, and I'll just add to that, one of the ways in which I, from an organizational perspective, I ensure that that happens is we started, we renamed our whole mental health piece Minding Our Minds. And then I incorporated a noonday nudge that was created for Black frontline employees, for example, to be able to exhale. So I think the way in which we do that is building it into our organizations, and also from the governance level, that having boards, as they talk about strategy, see the importance of this piece in the work of the organizations and all the employees that are there to carry out the work. Thank you.
Thank you so much. We appreciate your response. And Elder Josephine, what is your call to action for the leaders of Black-led non-for-profits and charities across Canada?
Oh my goodness, I think it's incredibly important for us to find opportunities to dialogue with each other about both making sure that we're not falling into the trap of trying to emulate or outcompete those who system has been built on our backs, for one, but also to really examine closely how we can take advantage of some of the resources that are out there for our young people without allowing those resources to be misused to drive them into the direction of their way of defining success. They want our young people to be lone wolf entrepreneurs and build their own empires, and this is not going to help us, and it doesn't really work for anybody for very long, of any color for that matter. So how we come together and help determine a broader and better set of values that are more rooted in our understanding of community, in our understanding of human needs, how we can start to reshape what success looks like, what we mean by sustainability, what is truly sustainable. If you don't have land and clean water and good food and warmth and shelter, then sustainability is a joke. Like just having, enough profit is not helping us. Obviously, the society that currently has made billions and billions and billions of dollars in profit is completely falling apart and destroying, our ecology. So changing the paradigm as we build together, I think, is incredibly important. And, I think sometimes us helping others to understand how their thinking has been misshapen by the conditioning that they've been subjected to, and checking ourselves sometimes too, in the making sure we're not falling into a competitive state or, distrustful state, as a brother said about, not allowing ourselves to be pushed into the bucket where we act like crabs. But yeah, also, as Floydine was saying, it creates martyrship and people working much too hard and much too on their own and not without enough support, because this culture has very unrealistic expectations of everybody. And we sometimes fall into thinking that to be excellent, we must burn ourselves out. And that's not going to help our movement. That's not going to help our people. And it's not going to help us to do healthy succession so that the younger generation can move forward and take things even further than we've brought them so far. So I think these are important things for us to think about. I personally find the human rights framework very useful. And it took me years to understand that applying the human rights framework was very great in my community and my work, but then recognizing I needed to apply it to myself, and that doing so was taking responsibility for my own health and well-being so that I could be responsible to my community, and understanding that rights come with responsibilities and they're equal force in achieving rights, that sense of responsibility. So the more we can work that way and help each other, I find it very important when we're talking with our newcomer neighbors to use the human rights framework, because it's something that we can all understand and recognize is for everyone. I think hopefully as a group of leaders, it also gives us more power and more even lawful, the ability to do and undertake lawful resistance and refuse some of the conditions that they try to impose on us. When we claim human rights, when we claim redress, we have more power to be able to say, thank you, but no thank you. We'll take that funding, but we'll do it this way. And I see that starting to happen with the Foundation for Black Communities and the work that Victor's doing, and the work that, Brother Rostam has been doing. And I'm very happy to see that. And I think we just need to do more of that, but also recognize that we're all human and we need support, and we don't have to be, so strong that we aren't taking care of ourselves. We need to find that balance, and we need to help each other maintain that balance.
Thank you so much. And
Yeah.
Brother Clement, what do you feel is your call to action for Black-led organizations, not-for-profits, and charities across Canada?
Thank you. For call to action, I'm going to say excellence. Excellence.
And my last question is for you, Elder Rustam. What are your closing thoughts on all of this?
That's a really tough one because there's a lot of interesting conversations that just went on. In particular, I was intrigued with your question to Floydine about, and the last couple of speakers, of how we as individuals doing this type of work that's built more on passion than economies, how do we take care of ourselves? And I can't help but compare to when, for those of you who travel on the airlines, when they're giving you the spiel about putting on your seatbelts, they always mention when the masks come down, put it on yourself first before you can help someone. And it sort of tells me that not only myself, because one of the reasons why I'm on vacation, I realized 2 years out during COVID, I had only taken a week vacation, and I was feeling tired, and I needed to just get away and slow down. And I'm hearing that with all these cases, because this type of work is a work of passion. And when the air hostess say, put your mask on first before you help anyone else, you could actually damage an organization. If you're a leader, actually create devastating effects for the organization that we have to help. So I would say pacing ourselves and be very careful. A lot of times in our team meetings, we like to go around and just check in, just do a health check-in with folks to see where their heads at and so on. And often in our organizations, we tend to chug along, not realizing the impact as well and having those rules. And then the other thing is, when we look at the work in the last little while, the work that Floydine and those guys have done with the meeting of the minds, that was a collective effort. And much of what we're doing right now came out of that setting, and kudos to the thought leaders and the folks who are looking at that. So for us, I think there's a lot of change going on now. There are a lot of opportunity, a lot of better organizations, better leaders, better involvement. I think we are in a time space now where the federal government and the provincial governments understands, and they're putting significant investment in terms of cash on the table. Is never enough, but they're actually getting some headways on those that's leveraging others. And I think it's Clement and someone earlier on spoke about the once you have strong organizations, you can then level from the private sector. Because if you look at the US, what the federal government is doing here, the corporations do down there. And the corporations don't do a lot of investment in Black communities here. Why shouldn't they be stepping up? You've seen that now with some of the banks, but you need a lot more support as well. So we actually take the position that our purpose drives the why we're here and the what we do. And apart from vision, mission, and all of that, we think that a single line that from the BBI perspective is that we're here for one thing is changing lives by creating economic independence. And that can go in so many ways, because economic independence gives you political independence, health, wellness, societal, whether it's strategies. I think one of the earlier speakers was speaking about strategies in terms of agri-food, healthcare, and being part of the digital economy, because we're in the fourth industrial revolution, which is tech-based and digital-based. And we need to pull our communities along that line, because it doesn't mean that you can't do a restaurant and so on. But if you're not involved in that, you're putting yourself further behind. And so we keep understanding, hey, these are the strategies as well. And the last thing that we need to do a lot better, seeing that you ask, is that a lot of whites, and not only white, but a lot of mainstream organizations have learned the dance of government relations. And we actually need to have our organizations understanding what government relations mean, with the contacts, with knowing what the policies are for the target areas and the strategies as well, because sometimes we feel we're not getting any support, but it helps us to be prepared to do that. And that means that you need to know who is the minister of what, but not only knowing the minister, you know, the EA and all those guys who can get you in the minister's office and break down some doors. And I think a lot of us in this type of setting, and certainly in other settings, need to understand that the minister is a political figure, but the guys around them are the ones who are making the decisions that can get you the doors. And those are some of the strategies that we look. So for me, it's not to drag on too much. It's about changing lives by creating economic independence and such as wealth creation and sustainability. I'm pleased to have been invited, and thank you for hosting us, and Victor as well for the invitation, and the other panelists. Actually, it's been quite powerful for me today.
Yes, it has been for us as well. We want to thank you for being here. I want to thank each and every one of our panelists. This was a remarkable discussion. We really appreciate and value each and every one of the remarks that were made here and taking the time to be here. Thank you once again. And to everyone else who tuned in, we thank you for taking the time and showing up. We appreciate you staying till the very end, getting the very last drop. And we want to end the session the same way that we began, by acknowledging the original stewards of the various lands that we are on. We also want to acknowledge our ancestors and those who toiled without compassion or compensation. We acknowledge all the elders and community stewards whose shoulders that we stand on as we build, share, and learn together for our collective liberation and sovereignty. Once again, thank you and have a great weekend, everyone.